Hey folks, this is Kalani. With so many players taking advantage of the experience bonus to get their ult leveled up, and then working through the new account-wide essence system to get caught up on that front, you may be wondering which essences are the best ones to spend your hard-earned Echoes of Ny'alotha on. Sure, you can farm this currency pretty much endlessly if you have unlimited time to farm dungeons and battlegrounds, but most of us don't have that much time. So we're relying on the big weekly sources of echoes, which will leave us with enough to get one or two of these essences per week. So which ones should you prioritize and which ones should you buy first? Let's take a closer look at each essence, how you can obtain it the normal way, and whether it's worth your Echoes of Ny'alotha to just buy it. I'm going to break this down by source because the largest thing to consider is whether you can actually pick up the rank 3 essence by itself the old way, or if it's actually just way better buying the essence with your Echoes of Ny'alotha because the old way is just too grindy. Now I think no matter what essence you're talking about, buying it with Echoes is going to be faster because most rank 3 essences are time gated at least a little bit, but some are still significantly worse than others to grind out the old way. For example, we have the Reputation Essences from patch 8.3. For the DPS, that's the Breath of the Dying. To get this the normal way, you would have to get to Revered with the Uldum Accord. Now, not only is that a lot of work, but it's going to take a lot of time. You'd have to do every daily quest, every extra event thing in Uldum every day, all the while finishing the assaults and major quest lines relating to the faction assaults. And it would still take you weeks to get it all done, even if you're doing all that every day. The real kicker here, though, is that this essence is one of the single best DPS minor essences in the game right now. Pretty much every DPS class will be using this essence as a minor. Obviously, check with your class Discord or Wowhead or Icy Veins or wherever you get your information to make sure it's one you actually want, but if there is a single essence that gets used the most, it's probably going to be this one. With that being said, it is usually only used as a minor essence, so I would suggest you definitely buy this one with your Echoes, but maybe make it your second or third purchase behind some of the stronger major essences that your spec will want to use. Breath of the Dying should definitely still be on your buy list though. Farming rep just takes way too long. For the healers, 8.3 rep will give you the Spirit of Preservation. This one comes from the Rajani rep, but you're in the same boat. You'll have to do all the dailies, events, assaults, etc. to farm the rep, and get to Revered to be able to buy it. The difference here is that this healing essence isn't always used by every healer. It has some very niche uses, but it's definitely not a go-to pick. But it will take a long time to get if you want to farm the rep, so this could be a buy, but not until you have everything else you already want. The tank essence from the same source is the Touch of the Everlasting. It's the exact same boat as the healing one. It's not that amazing for the most part, but getting it the normal way will take a lot of effort, so buy this one with your Echoes if you want it, but not until you have everything else you need. Up next are the essences that come from your Horrific Vision boxes. To get rank 3, you'll need to collect 45 sparks of Unwavering Strength, and these come from bonus objectives. The maximum you can get per Horrific Vision run is 8, and that comes from a full clear. To get 45 sparks, you'll need to finish 6 Horrific Visions, which can be done in 2 weeks very easily, but that's 2 weeks of full clears. If you don't full clear, this will start to take longer and longer, and you get more sparks from lost objectives. So if you can't clear those, and you're stuck to just the corrupted areas, it's going to take even longer than that. So this one depends a little bit. If you plan to be able to full clear visions very quickly on your ult, this might be worth skipping over. But if you can't clear them, or you don't really want to put in the effort on your ult to get the coalescing visions to actually be able to farm the visions, then this should probably just be a buy essence. That's also going to depend on your role though. The DPS essence, the Spark of Inspiration, really isn't that good. I don't think anyone really uses it for the vast majority of content, so I definitely wouldn't bother paying attention to this one at all. The healer essence, the Unwavering Ward, is the complete opposite. I think pretty much every healer will use this essence, at least for the minor power, for a lot of different types of content. It's great in raids, it's pretty useful in dungeons sometimes, and it can be good in PvP or even just solo. The passive shielding is really just pretty strong. So if this was one of the really good minor powers for your healer, you have a harder choice to make. It's still relatively easy to get this from visions, it's just going to take quite a bit of time. So a smart thing to do would be to buy your strong major powers first, and then if you're still nowhere near close to getting the 45 sparks that you need because it's just taking too long to get to the full clears, buy this one from the vendor as well. The tank essence, the strength of the Warden, is a bit of a mixed bag. It's somewhat decent for a defensive essence, but a lot of tanks don't actually run defensive essences unless they're pushing really high mythic plus keys. It's only ever used as a minor from what I understand, so it's kind of the same deal as the healing essence, except it gets used less. There are also a lot of other great tanking essences to get first, so maybe skip over buying this one as a tank. Next up we have the Formless Void. This is the Ny'alotha raid essence. Some bosses in Ny'alotha will drop an encrypted Ny'alothan text. You'll need 105 of these texts total to get your rank 3 essence. The higher difficulty you run, the more texts you'll get from each boss, and you can get text from Skitra, Il'gynoth, Vexiona, Raden, and N'Zoth. And heroic mode will drop 7 per boss for a total of 35 per full clear on heroic difficulty. That's 3 weeks of fully clearing heroic to get this essence of rank 3, but that doesn't even really matter because the essence really isn't that great. It's kind of useless for the most part. It's fun for healers sometimes to play around with stealing DPS essences and firing them off once in a while, and maybe as a minor essence for tanks if nothing else fits, but it doesn't see a lot of use in general. There are much better essences to spend your echoes on. We also have the Conflict and Strife essence. This one is a lot more clear cut. It's a huge grind to get your hands on it at rank 3 unless you can push your ranking relatively high. Even then it can take you 3 weeks or more, and you have to conquest cap every week on top of farming your rating. If your ult uses this essence and you already picked it up on your main, make this one of the first minor powers you buy. It's generally just a fantastic minor power for DPS and tanks. Healers probably won't want to get this one quite as early, but it's still useful in some cases. Next up is the Battleground Essences. You have to farm a whole bunch of honor for these ones, so another very easy one to answer. If you want to use Blood of the Enemy as a DPS, you have to buy it from the vendor. It's just not even worth talking about farming the honor again. It would take so long. You could probably buy every other essence from the vendor and then buy Blood of the Enemy and still have it way before you would if you tried to farm the honor out again. If you've already done it once on your main, don't put yourself through that again. Thankfully, the Healer Battleground Essence, Artifice of Time, is kind of useless. Not many players use it, so don't worry too much about it if you're playing an alt healer. And the same kind of goes for the Tank BG Essence, Sphere of Suppression. I've seen some niche uses of this one, but nothing super standard or mandatory. I wouldn't bother if you aren't trying to pull off some weird tricks as an alt tank. We haven't talked about many of the older essences yet, so let's touch on the Eternal Palace raid essences. These work just like the Formless Void, but they come from the Eternal Palace instead. You have to kill the Radiance boss, the Queen's Court boss or Queen Ajara herself, and then slap all those items together. It will take you 3 to 4 weeks total if you clear all 3 bosses on heroic, so it's just another weekly grind, except this time it's for old content. Weirdly, I think most of the Eternal Palace essences are actually better than the Ny'alotha one. The condensed Life Force DPS Essence still remains one of the stronger major essences for quite a few classes and specs, which means you're going to want to get your hands on it if you're playing one of them, but the Eternal Palace is old content, and clearing it with pugs can take quite a long time even if it's an old raid, especially when you get to the harder bosses, and you need 2 of the 3 last bosses to really make it worthwhile. I would say if you need condensed Life Force, just buy it. It's so much easier and faster, and you don't have to go back to older outdated content. The Healing Essence is the Vitality Conduit. This one doesn't see quite as much play as the condensed Life Force Essence, but it does have some really strong uses, like bypassing the Necrotic debuff for Mythic plus healing. It's a good pickup for some niche areas of the game, but it's not part of your essential kit, so I would recommend you buy it, but only after you have the other big essences under your belt already. The Tank Essence is a bit of a weird one. It's a really good defensive essence, one of the stronger ones when you think about the value it offers, but it doesn't offer any DPS value. A lot of tanks will take essences that increase defensive and offensive capabilities at the same time, so the Undying Gift kind of gets left behind until you really need that extra damage reduction. Because the Eternal Palace is a pain, I would still recommend you buy this one, but not as your first few essences. Next up is Ripple in Space. This is an easy one, don't bother at all. I don't know if anyone really uses this one all too often. It's a bit of a weird one, but there are so many better essences on offer. If you run out of essences to buy and you want every single one, sure, buy it at that point, maybe. I still wouldn't, but don't focus on it at all. And then we have the Mythic Plus Essences. These are super easy to get your hands on. You just need to get 15 of the anima item that comes from your weekly Mythic Plus cache. If you get a plus 10 key done, you should get 5 in your cache, so 3 weeks of doing plus 10 keys, and you're all done for this essence. Because they're so easy to get for me, I probably won't buy any of these essences at all. I will always get a Mythic Plus key done every week, and right now I can get a plus 10 key done on any alts incredibly easily thanks to the awesome guild and friends that I have. If you can't get high keys done at all, it might be worth buying later on, but honestly getting one Mythic Plus key done a week should be on everyone's list. The rewards are just so good for the time invested, and that includes a good chunk of Echoes of Nyalotha to help buy some other essences, so there's no reason not to get it done. If you're getting weekly caches, you will get your rank 3 eventually. All 3 Rolls essences are really good for Mythic Plus 2, especially the DPS Laser Beam, but I think this is an essence you will get no matter what, so it's not that big of a deal to buy it for Echoes, at least not at first. The Memory of Lucid Dreams is a bit of an oddball because it's kind of all or nothing. The classes that use this essence always want it because it's so good for them, and the classes that don't probably won't ever use it. So if you happen to play a Fire Mage or an Arms Warrior, I think a few others might be interested in it. Again, be sure to check your Wowhead or Icy Veins pages for your class and spec, whatever you prefer. But if you want this essence, I would strongly recommend you buy it. The usual way to get this essence takes a long time, and it's in Nazjatar. You have to do the bodyguard dailies for 16 days for a total of 4,800 bodyguard experience. It's not hard really at all, it's just time consuming. So I would buy this one 10 times out of 10 if your class needs it. Another essence set that comes from Rep is the Mechagon Reputation Essences. This is the same deal for the most part. You need to get to Revered with a Rust Bolt Rebellion, but there's an added grind of collecting up the currencies used on Mechagon, the galvanized oscillators and whatever else. That can actually take longer than getting to Revered sometimes. So this one is pretty easy. Buy the essence. It doesn't matter if you're a DPS, a healer, or a tank. All 3 essences are incredibly valuable, and this rep grind just isn't worth it. It probably won't be your first essence as any role, but pretty much every DPS will want the Purification Protocol for an AoE option, healers will want the Well of Existence because it's just a fantastic essence, and tanks will always want the Nullification Dynamo because it's the best magic damage reduction essence in the game. So whether it's your 3rd or 4th essence, don't bother trying to grind this one out the old way, just buy it. And then we have the World Vein Resonance Essence. This one got a massive buff recently, and a lot of classes are now using it as a minor power, and sometimes even as a major power if it lines up with your cooldowns nicely. To get it the normal way, you have to do 3 weeks of island expeditions minimum. That's not too bad, but you would have to get rank 2 in the first week before you complete your weekly to start rank 3. If you skip the first week, it can take 4 weeks of island expeditions, and even though island expeditions are super easy, that's actually still quite a long time to wait for your rank 3, and you have to do the missions in between ranks, and it's just a big kerfuffle. I would buy this one for sure. I really don't like island expeditions, so that kind of settles it for me. It was actually my first purchase on my alt hunter because it's really good for BM right now, and you won't catch me dead doing islands. The Crucible Aflame is a really interesting essence because while it's still used by quite a few classes and specs for single target purposes, it's actually one of the easiest essences to get. All you have to do is complete the storyline quests when you get to certain levels in your Heart of Azeroth. Rank 3 becomes available at heart level 60, I believe, and seeing as you skip to 50 and you can get to 60 without even trying, every alt should have access to that. All you have to do is go a little bbit out of your way to try and finish the quests, and you have an easy rank 3. This essence was also kind of replaced by the Breath of the Dying essence a little bit for single target, and we're buying that one already, so I probably wouldn't spend echoes on Crucible Aflame anymore. It's just so easy to get. The Nazjatar Reputation Essences are a little bit different. You probably don't want to do the Nazjatar rep grind, so you probably want to buy these essences as well, but the value you get is going to depend on your role. The DPS essence, the Unbound Force, is more or less worthless for the majority of classes. It's just not worth picking up at all for the most part, but the Healing Essence, the Ever Rising Tide, does see quite a bit of use thanks to its mana saving capabilities. So that's a good one to pick up as a healer, maybe as your 3rd or 4th essence, and the Tank Essence, the Aegis of the Deep, is really good for large groups of monsters like in Mythic Plus dungeons. It may only be used as a minor power most of the time though, so again, maybe a 3rd or 4th essence. I personally don't think any of the rep grinds are worth going through again, so they're all going to be buy options in my opinion, unless it's useless like Unbound Force. And the last one on the list is Vision of Perfection. Despite being a really good essence, this might not be one of the better ones for you to buy. It kinda depends on how you value your time. Since the Mechagon dungeon has been added to the heroic queue and to the Mythic Plus system, it's actually incredibly easy and quick to get this essence at rank 3. You need to do any Mechagon dungeon difficulty to get rank 1, then do it again to get the blueprint for rank 2, learn that blueprint and create the item, which requires a little bit of progression in the Mechagon story and some tinkering parts, and then just run the Mechagon dungeon on any difficulty over and over until you get 4 sprockets. That can be just 2 Mythic Plus runs when you get a +2 chest or above, or 20 Heroic runs. You can get sprockets on Heroic, but it's not guaranteed, so if you choose to do Heroic, you just have to run it over and over until you actually get it. Either way, it's really easy to get this one, but if you don't think it's worth the time and you absolutely need this essence, it still wouldn't be a bad idea to buy it if you don't have any other big upgrades on your list. As you can see, quite a lot of these essences are buy options, which makes me wonder if the original grind for these rank 3s was a bit too much. There's also still a huge gap between different essences. Blood of the Enemy will never be worth it to farm again, but the Focusing Iris isn't too bad. I probably wouldn't go for Conflict and Strife again, but the Crucible Aflame is no problem. It's all fine and dandy when we can say, oh, no problem, I'll just buy it for Echoes of Nyalotha if I don't want to do the grind, but what about the players who are just coming back to the game? And with our current situation, there's probably quite a lot of them. They don't have that choice at all, and some of the essences have terrible grinds tied to them. I would love to see any essence that comes from old content, like the Eternal Palace Raid essences, the 8.2 Reputation essences, and the Nazjatar Bodyguard essence, to be placed on the vendor for anyone to buy for Echoes of Nyalotha, even if they haven't already got it. This vendor works so well because echoes come from current content. Having to go back to Nazjatar as a returning player can't feel great, and they have weeks or months in some cases before they can get caught up to everyone else. The vendor doesn't provide essences for free, you still have to work for them, but it makes a bit more sense in how to acquire these powers for returning players. Adding the old content essences would be a great idea in my opinion. And that's all the essences covered, and whether they're worth buying or getting the old grindy way. I hope this helped anyone wondering what essences they should buy first, or which ones are actually worth buying and which ones to focus on. How is your alt essence farming going? Which essences did you decide to buy first, and why? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.